Hello friends, I enjoy coding and building stuff with code. Now how is that? Well, the pleasure of coding is something that I built and that I choose. I like to explain the ingredients, 7 relatively simple hacks or tricks that allow you to optimize your experience and your productivity. I'm talking from the point of view of a developer personally, but many of these tips apply to other activities that require concentration. So in this video, I'm going to talk about motivation and productivity and how to structure the way you work. But above all, I'm going to talk about something called flow, how to give yourself the means to reach it. So what is flow? It's a state of concentration, of focus. It's what sports people mean when they say they're in the zone. If you've ever started coding and then looked up and realized that 5 hours have passed by, as if in an instant, then what you experienced was probably a state of flow. And that flow, that state of focus, is also an essential ingredient of what makes coding so exciting and so fun. So what produces this state? To better understand it, let's talk about game design, if you don't mind. Because game design is all about trying to reproduce this state of flow and the feeling of immersion that comes with it. There's even a game designer, Jenova Chen, who created a studio built on the concept, and their first game was called Flow. And to reach this state, we try to build a balance of difficulty. If a game is too difficult, it becomes frustrating. If it's too easy, it becomes boring. And it's this balance, this razor's edge of mastery between failure and weariness, which is vital for this sense of flow, whether you're coding or playing a game. It should also be said that a game occupies all our senses, at least our directing senses, sight and touch and hearing, and it involves us physically, our body, our movements, and even for the best games, our emotions. So what does all this have to do with us in this discussion today? Well, consciously or not, good coders set themselves up to be in the same conditions as a video game player. First tip, time blocking. This means choosing a time slot for a task and blocking it in the calendar. My tool of choice for this is Google Calendar. I do time blocking where I set aside whole slots of concentration, of focus for a main task that I want to solve. It allows me to mentally dedicate that time for what I want to produce. You probably do have a time of the day when you work best, and it's this time that you should do your best to preserve, to time block. Second tip is zero distractions mode. Notifications are concentration killers. So I switch off email and Slack notifications and those from social networks, even YouTube. I also turn off my phone notifications. Most phone OSs have focus modes, and mine does. My Mac also has a native focus mode management system, which it actually nicely shares with my phone. And this allows me to disable all notifications in one click. And it's also possible on Windows to block all notifications, but you have to go into the settings. There are also programs that allow you to block sites that could be a distraction, like social networks, for example. I use Focus on Mac in my case. There's also Rescue Time, which includes some of the other tips on this list and which is available for both PC and Mac. Now, third tip, the highlight of the day. The idea behind this tip is a basic idea of game design. As a human being, we need goals that are both clear and ambitious. And so during these times of focus, or more globally over the course of the day, we need to give ourselves bosses to beat. Things that we can be proud of when we finish the day, even if we've only done that one thing. And so for me, when I start a day, when I start a focus period, I say to myself, this time I'm going there. Today, or for this session, my goal is this. This is my highlight. The thing I'm going to be proud of having accomplished at the end of the session or at the end of the day. Now, tip number 4, set intermediate goals and work towards the first one. Once I've chosen a goal, I take a bit of time to figure out the best way to get there, to draw up a plan, basically. When it comes to code, I write the algorithm as a series of comments in the body of the function that I'm interested in. For example, I could say /1 get the value I'm interested in, 2 check that it's valid, and 3 process that value. Actually, when I'm creating a YouTube video or a course or an article, I draw up the outline of what I want to say instead. Then I give myself about 5 minutes to start working towards the first item. And in practice, once I get going, once I start those first 5 minutes, I'm on my way. Tip number 5 is to balance the difficulty. As I've discussed above, the state of flow of intense focus is on a steep ridge between the pitfalls of frustration and boredom. If you realize that you're butting your head against a difficulty, take 5 minutes to get up and walk around in the fresh air and let your brain's two hemispheres talk to each other. This usually helps me think of another angle from which to approach the problem, another route around. And then there are even times when you should just leave the problem aside for another day and give yourself a more attainable goal to keep that productive balance. This allows you to explore the contours of the difficulty, and sometimes my brain whispers the solution when I wasn't consciously thinking about the issue at all. Tip number 6, structure your effort. In games, you progress by levels and then you breathe a bit in between. Well, there's a similar structure to working in code or in other work that requires concentration. An example of this structure is the Pomodoro technique, which means tomato or tomato in Italian. It's a popular strategy for managing your coding time. The idea is to divide your work into 25-minute sprints with 5-minute breaks in between. This allows you to stay focused for the longer term. The exact pace obviously depends on everyone. Personally, I find 25 minutes a bit too short when the conditions are right, but 25.5 is a very good pace to start with, and it's very popular. Now, my tip number 7 is to wear headphones and to listen to lo-fi music. One of the quickest ways to get me stuck into work is to put on a headphone and to listen to music, which allows me to limit sensory input from the outside world, and it reduces distractions. Just wearing headphones is actually helpful. It lets those around you know that you're in a tunnel of concentration. I often wear them when I'm tackling a particularly tricky piece of code, and I can feel the impact on the quality of my concentration and on my productivity. In terms of music, my advice is to avoid songs with lyrics, or at least not in a language that you know. I personally like instrumental music called lo-fi. It has a floating and deconstructed feel that helps my concentration. If actually you're interested, I made a video of about an hour of lo-fi music with a Pomodoro timer in 25.5 where I work during an hour, and I've put in the titles of the music if you're interested. This will allow you to apply these tips in a simple way. I hope you find it useful. In any case, it helps me to concentrate, whether it's on code or actually making these videos. So I suggest you either work with me to music, or let's meet up in the next video. See you there. And as the doctor would say, allons-y.